So excited to be here today, especially with my good friend and colleague, Jason Girardo. Chat's wide open. We depend on chat to make us as relevant as possible, as well as create some very significant takeaways that you can actually apply uh, right after the show. Again, we encourage comments from the audience and love to recognize you. And with that said, let me uh, let me turn it over to Jason, and we'll start talking about live streaming and really a little bit about who Jason is and his initial thoughts on live streaming. So, Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, it's great. I mean, this is an amazing thing. This live streaming, LinkedIn Live has been very powerful, and it's the sense of community. It's that reach. And I've done, I don't know, probably 30 plus podcasts, some live, some recorded, and it's just a different environment. It's just a different thing where I think the live streaming really brings the energy, and when the community shows up and people kind of have their questions and their comments and insights, it really adds to the richness of the program. Through this, I've made a lot of great connections, through your program, Dawn, and just the people that have been on the program, different opportunities, professionally, but also personally, and made some people that, met some people that I consider friends now and can reach out to and support them and get support. So it's just a big circle of connection.
Yeah, that's great. And you've been an outstanding guest host over the months. A lot of time you spend with Dave Snell, where there's quite a bit of alignment, and it really encourages consistency and familiarity. And when people get to see you more often and get to know you better, it breaks down a lot of the trust issues. It breaks down the really the guessing part of it. And the other real benefit I've seen, and I've done over 800 of these now, is you really get to be live with live people. And that's one of the reasons why these aren't scripted. It's encouraging for chat to bring other people into the conversation and actually move the conversation to wherever the moment lends itself to. And I think people are yearning for more real live conversations versus a lot of stuff that is just text back and forth or AI messaging. Kelly, who is hoping to be here today, also always talks about the pitch slap,
Right.
and how many people, just throw stuff against the wall hoping it'll stick. And you don't want to be one of the stickers. So we've got Carrie here, who is a regular, great guy, somebody you should get to know. His joke of the day is a termite went to a restaurant and the server asked what he wanted for his order. The termite says a table and 2 chairs. Well, that makes a lot of sense since termites eat wood. And we've got Dennis here, our outstanding member of the audience, who probably has the record for being here more often than any other individual in the audience, and actually was on the show. Dennis says, agree, we get to see live, and it's so helpful to be real live. And I think everybody wants to project the best they can be in the moment because, there's something to authenticity, spontaneity. So how are you seeing, the medium itself and how it could move thought and action?
I think it's great. I've had some personal experience with planning events and sharing invitations, stuff like that, putting it out there, and then the results are hit and miss. Who shows up, who doesn't, but when you have something that's consistent and in the moment and where people can jump on and join a live conversation, I think it adds a little bit more richness to it. And I've seen, for me personally, I've grown by doing these programs where, like, I used to be a trainer. I'm a trainer, and I used to be a trainer professionally, but I was very scripted. And I get feedback from my trainer and my mentors. They're saying, "Hey, Jason, stay off the page." and you're so much more appealing. You're going to do such a better job staying off the page. But I always had that concern about, well, it has to be perfect. I have to convey this just this way and had to write. Where, doing these, like I said, I've done a lot of podcasts, but doing these with you, it's just given me that freedom to be more heart-centered and to be looser. And so for me, my professional growth has been able to speak at a different level on these things. And it affords you the freedom to do that, because if I miss a step, that's it. I miss a step and we move on. And whether you take over or pass it, like if it's you and I and Dave, or with Kelly or whatever, the other person can step in and take over. And that's the reality. And that's just like a conversation. If you're sitting around a circle of friends and you're talking and you're like, oh, what's that word? Or, I was thinking of something else. It doesn't have to become unnatural. People will step in and either help you with a word or continue the conversation. And that's what the live gives. It gives that feeling of connectedness and being in the moment.
Absolutely. And, the moment allows you to move in ways and that you may never have been able to script, possibly impossible to script. And you'd rather go with where you are, with who you are in the moment, and address that than presume you're going to be there, or take it for granted that whatever you have to say has as much value to everybody, no matter the context or the composition of the audience.
Right.
And the other thing is, it gives you a chance to learn from the person you're with,
Right.
and also to ignite ideas and thoughts that they really encourage and promote, and really start to learn better yourself. So you're actually in a co-training environment where when you leave, you have picked up things not only you have said, but other people have said in relationship to it, and vice versa. And you also get more comfortable talking in the moment, spontaneity, with some spontaneity. And then when you do get up on a stage and you forgot your lines or don't have any, you can just go with it.
Right.
The challenge most people have with going with it is they tend to think too much and do too little, where they're seeing, how do I wordsmith this to the best of my ability? How do I make myself funny? And anytime you got to force something, it comes out kind of flat and forced. And, the thing is you want people to get to know you for who you are, not who you want them to think you are.
Right.
And there's an authenticity issue. So it seems like a lot of potential for personal growth and advancement if you trust yourself to trust yourself. What are your thoughts on that, Jason?
It's so true. And, so beyond, I was thinking as you were saying that, and, beyond you trust yourself. Yeah. You find when you work without a net, so to speak, how it changes things. And what about having a mentor, so having you as a mentor is great, Don. Like, you've done this, you've done 800 of it. You worked a lot of the bugs out to where, like, if I was to start my own program just by myself, it would be different, where I would head out and figure. It helps me to see, like, oh, well, let's do it this way. And then to be able to follow your lead helps me to be more comfortable in it and not have to fight the jitters of, well, I haven't done this before, and how am I going to do this? And it gets rid of all those first 10 boxes you have to check off before you do something like this. So you can get into the meat and the heart of it and just get more comfortable. So, and then once you're more comfortable, what happens? Then you trust yourself. And it just builds from there. So I think that's why it's really important that I think folks know that, you train people, you help people to do their own. That's a huge advantage, because they're starting from a place where it took you X amount of hundreds of shows, whatever it was, to get to that level of knowledge. Just like everything, having someone that's been through it that can guide you through it helps you experience it for yourself in your way, but from a place of growth and not a place of wonder, like, oh, how's this going to work?
Absolutely. And, what comes to mind is, going back to the beginning and not knowing where it was going to take you or how it was going to take you, and knowing you're at the beginning, which means it can only get better from the first opportunity. The first show kicks it off and then lets it fly. I think what's so validating is the people who have come together with me and the people in the group and have been able to learn and accelerate their progress based on the insights and the experience other people have had, and then integrated into their shows, which then gets duplicated through other people's shows. So, Kelly, who's been with me for 15 months, actually more than that, 17 months. And, it took her, I'd say about 7, 8 months to get her own show, The Awesome Journey with Christy Howard on Tuesdays. It's on hiatus until the next season starts. And then Harvey Tuck, who's in the group, launched in 4 months. And then Carl Dakin launched in 2 months. And then Harvey came along and launched his second show about 2 months ago. Carl Dakin is launching his second show next week, starting at Thursdays. And he's actually got a group of 5 people that he's working with that are going to be on the show. They all join forces to create community development opportunities that can be duplicated throughout the country, and are using live streaming as a way of collaborating together and also synchronizing their center of influence with invitations, bringing relevancy. So, it's not only duplicating from where I came, but it's reciprocating from where everybody else is coming from. So, in other words, and that's why even today we have our Thursday Zoom group, is everybody come together and say, in the last 2 weeks, here's what's been successful for me. Here's some guests you may be thinking about. Here's what we can possibly do together. So now you've got 7 people really helping the other people in the group in some small or important way, that everybody climbs a lot faster on somebody else's bricks that they put on the wall.
Right.
And you just, if you can see where it started to where it is to where it could go because of the synergies and the ability to leverage this, it could be a dominating force, because you're working against 1 billion registered users on LinkedIn. One person by themselves is like a drop in the ocean, right? But if you can build significant strength and camaraderie, and have people who really celebrate other people's wins, because it says, if they can do it, I can do it. And if they can tell me how they did it, I can even do it better or faster.
Yeah.
So, I think anything you have that integrates hope, opportunity, optimism, positiveness, and I think that's why we always take special measures to make this a safe, honoring place where we celebrate people who are willing to share difficult situations and encourage them to do so without fear of criticism or judgment. And I think if you carry that forward in everything else you do in your relationships with people, you'll find it to be far more beneficial than trying to be the big shot, the guy who or gal who knows everything, who can tell you what you need to know before you even tell them what you need to know.
Right.
Is encouraging. So, Jason, how is this starting to impact your way of looking at live streaming, as well as your way of adjusting what you've been doing as you've been doing it to really enable some of these quality benefits?
It has, and it's just about, we have to make time. We have to pick what works for us, and sometimes we can get the forest for the trees. And as you're a longtime business owner, you know that you can just try a lot of things, and then sometimes you get stuck with just, well, I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and it's like, well, but what are the results that you're getting, and are the results there? And that's been a challenge that you and I have talked about. For me, is that I have to be aware of, making the time for, the energy for, the space, a lot of different things. But it has shown up for me. The process has worked well for me. And
Well, a little bit of a lag there, but with that said, want to welcome another guest in the audience, Omar M. Omar is a fantastic individual, great friend and colleague of mine. I've been on his show, Zoom Party, and he does so much. Very unselfish individual. Omar, great to see you. If you can check out Omar's show, I think you'll be entertained and impressed. So thank you again, Omar, for being part of the audience and supporting the show. And likewise, always support what you're doing and look forward to having you back on the show. So, and that's kind of fascinating is, Carrie's here quite a bit. Dennis is here. Omar's here. And there's so many people who are here, pop in. I know Christine Feedy is a constant supporter of the show, and I can go on. And it does gratify you to know you have enough value to justify people's schedule and their time, their thought, and that makes a difference. And it's really hard to get momentum on your own. And one of the reasons I believe so many people have been successful from this show is they were here enough to build familiarity with an audience that looks forward to these types of shows. So Kelly had a lot of people and still does from the people on the show. And I think that's one reason people continue on the show is why not expand your audience with someone else's. I've always been a believer that when you bring two circles together, they both get bigger and, complement each other. And, having Ford Sykes on the show this week, he made a comment, and he's a significant player in a lot of different arenas, is that you never know when that one person is going to see you or that one person's going to hear you. And that can open a door where most people, and we talked about this, I believe, yesterday, is most people are looking for numbers without a lot of depth to them,
right,
versus a few people who are closely aligned with them that they can build on in a much more cost and time efficient way. So with that, Jason, getting to meet a lot of people, especially in the group, is probably or should expand one's awareness, but also, they say a smart person is someone learns from their own experience. A really smart person learns from others. And I do believe that trust is so essential to every part of this. And how do you build trust? By getting to know people,
right.
getting to experience things over time. So has your ability to trust gone up over time?
I'm a naturally trusting person. In the world that I work in mental health, I mean, that's the first thing that I always start with is with each client. I say, I'm going to take everything you tell me as the truth, and there's no judgment from me. That's how I start with that, because I work with sensitive things and stuff that are very personal, have to open up. And so we have to have an implied trust to begin, and then it builds up over time. But with this, yeah, definitely it's been great to be able to be, community is very important to me. Don, we've talked about that. I talk about that all the time because I really believe in it. And this is a strong community. And, if I know somebody, and here's the reality, trust builds on itself. Because I know, like, if you refer somebody, or Leslie refers somebody, or Kelly refers somebody, I trust it. I'm like, definitely, let's connect. If someone reaches out to me cold, I'm like, well, let's look and let's see if this is a fit and what's going on, and if this is, where's this person coming from, and what's this going to look like, etc. What are they looking for? But if it comes from someone that I'm already, in this community, it's built in, it's inherent. And so that's what these relationships have done. And that's the part of live streaming, is that we get familiar with each other. We know each other, and we're like, oh, this is a good person. Yeah, definitely. And I do it with everyone here. The people that show up in the comments that I haven't had the opportunity to really meet one-on-one yet, I know that they're part of this community. And so if I see someone wants to follow and I see that they're following them, I'm like, oh, sure. this is a good person because they're not going to follow someone that's, it's going to cause challenges. They're in it for the same purpose. So in that sense, yeah, my trust has grown within this community exponentially. And just personally, it's allowed me to see, you know what, I can trust that if it doesn't work out, I could just move on.
Yeah, and I think that's a role that people start to appreciate and assume is they can be a quality matchmaker. So part of it is qualifying people and then curating and go who is most aligned with someone, who would be a great complement in a show together. And you also, growth is kind of interesting because you don't know how much you've grown until you compare it to something. You know, if you're around kids and you're with them every day, you don't see their growth every day.
Right.
If you get to visit a nephew in 6 months, you say, boy, you sure grew. Why? Because the last reference point was when they were smaller.
Yeah.
The same thing you get to appreciate is when you get to know a new person, how is their skill set towards trust? How is their listening skills to say, hey, I'd love to hear more about you and what your story is, even before I tell you mine, right? Because then in your mind, say, well, the story I tell will probably be adjusted based on the story I just heard. Right? If someone says I'm from St. Louis, I love baseball, first of all, you're going to think Cardinals, right? And maybe you're a Cardinal fan or maybe you're not, but you'll think that and you'll say, hey, I love the Cardinals. Or you went to University of Michigan. I went there 4 years after you. And remember that football game. People love to connect with things they're already connected to.
Right.
I'm finishing the book Audible on atomic habits.
Mm-hmm.
And it tells you all about how to build best habits, how to retain them. The thing that they mentioned today, or the author, was if you have a routine, it's not that important that you have to do it all the time, even though it has value, but never miss the second time, because now you're starting to build the other habit. And it doesn't matter how well you do, it just matters that you show up to do it.
Right.
And I think too many people are into performance instead of acceptance, because once you can nail it as far as that habit, like I'm going to walk a half an hour a day, I'm going to cut back on my sugar consumption, I'm going to do whatever. And it's hard because it's something that you're used to. And I think what it speaks to is change just for change's sake is difficult.
Right.
So you can turn somebody from something to something and another person from that something to something else. And you're still going to be dealing with people who may have some level of resistance. And I think another qualifying factor is teachability.
Right.
Is somebody open to learning? Is someone willing to say, well, if you can show me some better or I could experience some better, I'll change to that better, or at least I'll work towards it. And everybody needs a goal,
Right.
And challenges, people want to set goals that are too stringent, too early, that take too much effort, and you lose the enthusiasm and the fun that goes with something new. If someone said, try a new ice cream flavor, well, if it's just taking a little spoon and tasting it, that's not a difficult change. But when it comes to order, if someone's into butter pecan and someone's into pistachio, they're going to probably go back to butter pecan. They did a study, especially not only today, but years ago when people got dishes and got connected to 140 channels, that they would always come back to the 4.
Mm-hmm.
And test yourself. You get a little bored with what you're watching, you start going through everything, and you land back to where you are because that's where you're used to being, and that's where you don't get surprises. And I think people avoid newness because of fear that isn't based on reality. And the other thing is, we talked about this in many shows, is you are the factor of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And one has to work on association and disassociation to keep yourself fresh, go with people or go in places that you're going, and then being able to leverage off of that. So, there's so much to be learned by the conversations you have with the circle of influence you have, and then your ability to expand and create new opportunities from what you hear, what you see, and what you experience. So, that's why I love doing live streaming, and that's really what the topic is about today, is getting out there and impacting not only other people, but through the initiative itself, impacting yourself. Because unlike making a change for change's sake, when you start to understand that this change will allow you to make further changes, you're actually enhancing your ability to evolve. And I think that's so important. So, looks like Jason's having a little technical problems. I'm sure he'll be back. More than happy to welcome any thoughts or comments. And, with that, really looking forward to hearing what your thoughts are on live streaming, what your experience has been with it, and more specifically, what your thoughts are towards this show and what's attractive. So, love to hear what you have to say in the interim, and really reflect back on the people who I have learned so much from with live streaming. And, just to kind of, recognize the people in the group. You've got Kelle Steinecke. Here's Jason back again. So did really well so far, holding the ship. Glad you have it back. And, that's the fun of live streaming.
Right.
Is you just never know. Technology is your friend and foe here. I wouldn't say every day, but it's either a camera, it's either a microphone, it's either a connection, it's either some software. But I've really got, they say you can fail your way to the top if you're smart enough, because every time something goes wrong, it's less of a challenge than it was at the beginning, because you're totally surprised and lost.
Right.
And you're fumbling around while you're live, versus, oh, I forgot to turn this off. Or as soon as it happens, 3 things come to mind. And the other thing is, if you do it enough, no one session is going to be make or break. If you had an event that you scheduled every 6 months and for some reason things went kind of wacky, you'd be totally disappointed and feel like you weren't supported for until the next 6 months. But when you're doing it almost every day, it's just as natural as taking a walk. So here we go. Jason's back. Okay, you look better and you look stronger. Jason.
Yeah, and I apologize. I know it could be distracting, and it is something that happens. We've talked about this before. It is a challenge, and I wanted to make sure I tried to clean everything up that I could. But that's the reality, and that's the thing about live streaming and about live training is that if you're too polished, people know it. And not that you want bad things, that you don't want these glitches to happen. Obviously, you want a smooth show, and you want the best presentation to people to get the information and to have a good conversation. But I think one of the benefits actually of live stream is people can see that. There's that TEDx has its place. It's beautiful. It gives a lot of great information, a lot of opportunity for people, and it's super polished. I mean, they go in, I know people that do TEDx's, they go in well in advance and they have to train and they have to redo it and all that, and it works its purpose, and that's great. But you also have to have times to where, we say the warts and all. And that's the thing about live stream, is that gives you the muscle. This gives you the muscle to do other things. Because if you're polished and something comes up, can you pick up and just keep running with it? Or is it like, uh-oh, I didn't do step 13, so step 14 is not showing up for me now. What am I going to do? Well, here, these things show up. And maybe the conversation goes in a direction that you weren't thinking, and you have to kind of catch up with it in that way. Or if you have a glitch, or something goes on, or if a pet comes in the room with you, you have to learn to react to it. And I think people see that and respect that. How you respond to that almost more than if you were perfectly polished and had a great presentation. That's the thing about this LinkedIn Live, is that it just has more of a warm feeling. For me, at least, it has a more of a warm feeling, and you see the true, authentic people show up.
Yeah, those are tremendous points. And the reason I say that is TEDx is a great example of something that you need to prepare for, rehearse for. I know people that spend time just thinking of their wardrobe, just thinking about how they position themselves. And that's all fine and well. But how many people can do a TEDx? Not that many.
Right.
Because it takes an investment. I knew Tara Gooch, who was actually my first guest. She flew to England to do a TEDx.
Yeah.
And she took months. And actually, I've seen people that really cancel their whole calendar 30 days in advance.
Yeah.
So the only thing they think about is that. And that's terrific. But live streaming gives anybody an opportunity who can flip on a switch and log in.
Right.
And I think it's really the most democratic way of doing live streaming, is everybody can do it who chooses to. Everybody can do it without any additional cost. And, when things go right, people see how you respond.
Right.
It's mostly when things go wrong that they're more curious, right? Drop a hammer on your toe, right? And people will be, oh my goodness, how is this going to work out?
Right.
Versus nail in with a hammer, and that's like cool, but it's like expected.
Right.
And I think the key is it's really about discipline without having a lot of discipline. How many times did you used to do something you learn not to do, which is usually overreact, let your mouth do the talking before your brain had a chance to really process it,
Right.
and find out that what you just did compounded an issue versus supporting an issue. Yeah. It's so much, and especially if you know you're right, when you don't show you're right to somebody else, right? Someone drops a picture of whatever on the floor, and right there they dropped it. It's a mess, and it gives you a great opportunity. Why don't you be more thoughtful? Why don't you pay attention to what, and really it has nothing to do with what you dropped. It has these latent feelings about the person that now created an opportunity to share that with them.
Right.
And what does that do? How many people get in fights in their family about something really small? Someone made maybe a disrespectful comment, or drank a little too much and got a little too loose, and they forgot what it was about, but they maintain that challenge. If they're there, I'm not going, or all these little things. And I find myself looking at people and saying, you're burning bridges, not building bridges. Right. You're acting in a way everybody expects people to act. But what happens when a person decides to come back with kindness, to come back with, hey, I know you haven't slept in a while, and that happens, you get a little clumsy or whatever, however you want to state it, or it's okay, it's only water, right? Or it's only a glass. Don't worry about it. And, when you have an opening and you don't take it, people respect you for that. How many times did you get in a challenge and you say, oh, geez, I'm in for it and I deserve it, right? I screwed up really bad.
Yeah. And
if that person says that, I would have to accept responsibility. But when a person says, hey, it hardly ever happens, don't beat yourself up, you're better than this. And how is that going to reflect on the next time you decide to do that same behavior?
Right.
Are you going to shy away from it because you got reprimanded or felt bad about it? And live streaming is like that, is who has the grace, who has the ability to say, hey, that's not an issue. I do it all the time. That would be a person who steps into a situation and accepts something that had nothing to do with them at the time, but says, hey, you're not alone. Everybody does it. And that's where we talked about at the beginning is you need context. You need something to measure against. And everybody's got the excuse, well, it's live, right? I couldn't edit it. I spilled my drink in front of everybody or something else. But I think that makes you more natural, more organic, more personable. Because people do want to see your warts also because, I've seen people change their profiles and put 20, 30-year younger pictures on. and maybe, if you know the person, maybe it's kind of a joke. But if you don't, it's like, what were you ashamed of? What were you hiding? And didn't you think I would actually see you and say, what happened between this and that? And that gives you a clue as to what not to do. And I think when you could eliminate things you shouldn't do, you have either more time or attention to the things that you want to highlight.
Right.
And it's not how smart you are. It's really what a good person you are. Yeah. And it's not what you know, it's what you can help somebody else know. So covered a line. Well, Carrie has another joke. Thank you, Carrie. If he dropped a hammer on the toe, then they nailed it. I guess that's a good way of looking at it. Or don't pick up a hammer if it's going to come on your toe. So, Jason, so many things we've kind of covered in all kinds of ways. What sticks out to you now?
What you were talking about is kindness. I think that's what a definition I put on one of the things you were talking about is kindness and being kind. And when things go wrong or when things go right and looking at it from there, I thought of, I don't know, I see the relevance obviously, but I thought of a story, this thing about live, right? Things show up and you're like, oh, let's investigate that if it's pertinent. But when you were talking about if people make a mistake and then being kind, and that, this shows up for LinkedIn Lives. I remember, so my grandmother passed away in 1986, many years ago, but I still remember being in her kitchen as a little guy in Tracy, California, many years ago, and I broke a glass. I dropped a glass, and I was like terrified and horrified, and she was like, "You're fine. It's okay. You just dropped a glass." My reaction, I was a small child. I was like in tears. And she's like, "You're fine. It's just a broken glass. Let's just be safe. Let's just figure it out. I'll clean it up. We're good. And we'll get you another glass of milk." And I still remember that kindness. I think we remember that. And that's the thing about, we could always show up in that way. And that's something that builds with community. And so I wanted to touch on that just a little bit because I think that's so important. And the other thing is, we talked a little about this yesterday, and I was thinking about, talking about how we present ourselves and our pictures and when they're from. And, I had professional headshots done, I don't know, 8 years ago. And since then I have a little more salt than pepper. And I was like, well, it's time to update. So I updated my photos and I got some really good pictures and I updated them and everything's fine. Being genuine is very important, I think. And that's the thing about LinkedIn Live, that you can really show your true self and you show up and how you are. I've had not a lot, I take that back. I've had a few interactions because I like to meet people. And I've seen we've communicated through, let's say, LinkedIn. I've seen their pictures, I've seen their posts. And then we get on a coffee chat and the person comes on and I'm like, I don't know who this person is because they look so different from their presentation. And it's like, oh, hey, Bob, or, just making a name up. And so it shows, and it's like, oh, are you being genuine as you present yourself? And we all want to put our best foot forward. Don't get me wrong. I use in some of my marketing, I use AI in some of my marketing because it's, I want to have a specific message go out, but there's certain things that I want my voice to be on too. So I know there's a balance there. However, you also, at the core, you have to show up. And that's the beauty about LinkedIn Lives, is that there's nowhere to hide. This is you. And so people get to learn and see the real you. and decide if they want to be in your community, if they want to work with you, if they want to work for you, whatever that looks like, because we're a professional website here on LinkedIn. But you get to the brass tacks, you get to like the nitty gritty, so to speak, and you find out what's really going on so you can make an informed decision about this relationship.
Yeah, you make a great distinction and an example with your grandmother, with the broken glass. And, I always say this statement is no one cares how much you know until they know you care.
Right.
The other thing that comes from what you were mentioning is if you are proud of yourself, if you are confident in yourself, you allow yourself to promote and project that with all the pluses and minuses that other people may experience. And, just like some people are afraid of their background, some people
Right.
are afraid to bring people into their house for fear that, oh, they're going to see what I see. But, I think a lot of times I believe in shared responsibility. If you have a problem with something or somebody that really gets to you, it's really identifying a problem you have within yourself,
Right.
right? Because everybody else's life is theirs. You don't have to take ownership. You don't have to take responsibility for it. But, when someone, and then it's how you respond to criticism. How do you take judgment? And a lot of times people will take it too much to heart
Right.
instead of just taking it as a curiosity. Well, why did you think my shirt was so grotesque? The way, right? Why did that have to come up? Again, without judgment. But some people don't even know how negative they can be.
Right.
How much of a downer they are. And I think that's what people want to really judge by is, am I in a better position an hour later through this show than I was when I began? And if that's the case, I've got an overall improvement in, my attitude, my ability to go forward with a better attitude to the next person. And how do I build on it?
Right.
And opposed to how do I stay where I'm at? How do I keep everybody in line? Because that lends itself to being controlling,
Right.
and if it's not in your control, you're usually out of control. And that tends to show up. And I think everybody, you never know what they're going through. You don't know if someone just had a death in the family, someone had a big loss, someone had to give up their business. And why not say there's more to it than I'll ever know?
Yeah.
In that case, I'll give a little more credit. I'll reserve myself. And nobody wants to know how bad they are, right? Nobody wants to know that you found that little flaw
Right.
most people didn't see. And what comes around goes around. Kindness is contagious,
Love that.
right? Someone says, boy, that person was so nice to me who didn't even know me. That person did something because it was something that they thought I could benefit from. And so many people have that ability, but they have that hesitancy. If you're on a plane and you take out some chewing gum, right? The natural thing is, even if you know the person next to you, you'll say, hey, would you like a stick of gum?
Yeah.
Right? It's only a stick of gum, but most people won't say that because they're not used to giving without getting.
Yeah.
They're usually secondary. If that person asks me for a stick of gum, well, when I bring out some candy, I may be in a better position to say, hey, by the way, would you like some of this candy? But when everybody's knowing what they could be doing and should be doing and doesn't, it stalls that flow. And it's really like, hey, if I help this person, maybe that might be the moment. I know Kelly's brought that many times, and she's dealing with veterans and first responders. And she's had a couple stories that said this person was going to end their life, but some act of kindness, which was very small. One gentleman said, someone just gave me a smile, and I was on my way to ending it all. And that smile took me back enough to not go forward with something. So you don't know what people are going through. You don't know how a little bit of kindness may be the difference in their whole life. And the cost to you is zero.
Yeah.
Everybody has words, they always use them, but how do you use them? To who do you use them? And what's your intent? Because anytime you're showered with kindness that came out of the blue, I used to love like those Oprah shows where everybody got a car today, you
Right.
know, and it's like, geez, I never knew I'd get a new car. You don't know what you don't know. But what I do know is no matter how excited and positive you are, that will diminish. At the same time, no matter how depressed and frustrated you are, that will diminish if you let it.
Right.
But if you have a mantra every day is I'm no good, I'm not enough, I'm this, I'm that, you're just hypnotizing yourself into more of it.
Yeah.
And that's why people watch these shows is maybe they don't have what it takes to take care of themselves all the way, but maybe they got 80% and you fill in the 20, right? And that's what I always say. If you can't do it, could we do it? And could we find a way to do it? Because I think everybody wants, that shoulder to lean on. You know, I forget that song, "You're My Brother," and
So that's
it had,
heavy.
yeah, yeah, "You're not heavy, you're my brother," uh, and I think that's so beautiful. But people get so caught up today, and I think kindness and politeness and respect was part and parcel of how things were when everybody had more time than things to do with it.
Right.
Growing up, there was 3 channels on the TV. Most of them weren't really meant for younger people. You know, the other thing is if you didn't have nothing to do, you'd go outside and find something to do. You wouldn't be sitting in your room. You'd be looking for friends. You'd be going to the schoolyard, whatever. Today, people like, oh, check Instagram, check TikTok, check this, check this. Where's all the energy? Where's all the excitement? And they really get an adrenaline rush because of seeing rhinos go over a waterfall or somebody doing the weirdest, unsafest things. And I actually saw a video today of a bridge and a guy was on a bicycle and he actually rode up the whole thing that held the bridge together like an arc. And I'm thinking he's going up 30, 40 feet. If that bike falls off along the way, he might be in trouble. But, I catch myself and I say, no more of this right now, because 1 minute can turn into 10 minutes. And all of a sudden it crowded your mind out of the important thoughts and the important people. And I think that's another thing we talk about is when you're with somebody, are you truly with somebody?
Right.
Or you're just in the same room with them. And we talked about that yesterday. I think Dave brought it up, is how many times you see a family at dinner and everybody's got their phone out between ordering and eating. Then they eat, go back to their phones, and then they go home, right? And they could have done that with a takeout. What was the point of going to a nice restaurant, getting service, being around other people, and everything you're looking at will always be there. Every post doesn't go away. So why not identify, well, here's a time I'm going to be with this person. Let's say go to lunch with somebody and I won't see him again for a month or two. Well, why wouldn't every minute of that lunch be with them, about them, for them, and vice versa?
Right.
And after a while, it gets disrespectful. Even when people don't look at you, you tend to think, I'm not important to them. Or they're not mature enough or evolved enough to understand that when they're looking at their stuff and looking away from me, it's unmotivating for me to get excited by this. And pretty soon you're thinking, how fast can this end? And I may not do this again anytime soon. So what you're doing in the present really impacts the future. And what you're doing with one, if you continue, will affect everyone, versus taking the default position, which is the minority position, which I'm going to be kinder than most people are to most people. I'm going to make this hour truly about them.
Right.
Right. And, especially when you're with people who have challenges, older people, people who are infirmed, and you understand, can I bring a little sunshine to them today? My takeaway would be, how do I make them feel better for me being here, versus how do I make myself look better for being here? Or how do I, someone says, I'm not here to impress you, but to impress on you. Right?
Yeah.
Too many people are patting themselves on the back, versus I've got something really valuable I hope to help you with. And if anything, anything I can do, I'd love to have that opportunity. And in most cases, it'll be, can you get me a glass of water? Do you have a toothpick? Can I have a Kleenex? It's not major investments. And you actually feel better. It's like, thank you very much. I'll get you a box of Kleenex right now. And while I'm gone, can I get you an ice cream? Can I do something else for you? And what you're doing is really strengthening your gifting muscles.
Right.
You're exercising them. And, you come away so much happier when someone, says, thank you so much, you made my day, or this is the best thing that's happened to me in a long time.
Yeah.
And to me, that is better than, hey, here's $20, buy yourself lunch on me.
Yeah.
And I think people are too material, and they're really not as focused on heart-to-heart opportunities, showing themselves for being who they've evolved into. Because you can say, I learned all this stuff, and I know we talked about that too. Smart without application is actually an empty opportunity that never gets fully realized.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts? We sure came into a deeper place, and I love how that always happens.
Yeah. Yeah. You've said some great things, and just kind of listening, obviously, and paying attention and learning, and then thinking about it. Something that's very important that you'd mentioned is the environment we're in nowadays, and how we're so distracted, and we distract ourselves. And that's a deeper conversation for later about, solving the real issues and just that. But we have the opportunity to connect. And that's what this is about the opportunity to connect. You can watch some pre-recorded YouTube videos, you can watch some other things and just kind of distract yourself. The beauty of the LinkedIn Live, and I'm not trying to just toot the horn on LinkedIn Live. I mean, I think it's valid, is that this is a conversation. This is an active conversation. I'm in California. You're in Colorado. This is live. This is right now. You and I are having a conversation. The community is here with us. And Dennis and folks have these great comments coming in, but they're participating and they're here and it's live. And we have pulled ourselves away from community to an extent. We have disconnected. And connection is one of the main purposes of life, is connection. And this allows people to connect at this level, on a digital level, but still connect live and in person, so to speak, where other things don't give you that opportunity. So I think it's so important that we take advantage. I talked yesterday, and I talked a lot about just using tools, like AI is a tool, and how do you use it? Well, the internet is a tool, and how do we use it? Well, we choose to have these conversations. We choose to engage each other. We choose to engage the community. And that is the value. That's huge value. We're not here trying to sell something. We're not here trying to, pitch something and whatever. Obviously, we're both in business and things of that nature, but the reality is that we're here to have a conversation. We're here to connect with our fellow humans and say, hey, what's going on? What can we talk about? Let's engage ourselves in a conversation. You don't get that much. I was talking to someone yesterday about, the 3 and 4 years of COVID, how it just, we disconnected. And now we're going like, oh, well, that, not necessarily specifically this, but it's almost like it never happened. we're acting like we didn't go through that horrible times and the loss of life and the sickness and everything that went with it, but the disconnection too, where we had a quarantine. We have a friend staying with us from Ireland, and we were comparing notes about what did your quarantine look like and what was our quarantine like, but we've all went through it. The point was we all went through it, and so now we have the opportunity to re-engage, to reconnect. But I think some of the bad habits of those times are sticking with us. And not to get technical, but I'm trained in polyvagal theory, talks about the nervous system, and we're always looking for clues of safety or clues of fear-based, things going on. And when someone doesn't make eye contact with you or someone looks away from you, our nervous system feels that. It feels that disconnection, and it's like, whoa, what's going on? This person does not care for me. So if you're ever talking to somebody and they take out their phone and look at their phone to check their messages, see how you feel inside. It doesn't feel good, and that's the reality. But we need to rebuild that. Let's rebuild that one-on-one. Let's rebuild that talking to each other and being present for each other. And I think this is a huge opportunity. The last thing I'll say on that is, I also teach mindfulness and meditation. And what's mindfulness? Being present in the moment. And that's the beauty about this, is that this is our moment right now. And we are here together, and let's enjoy that. So I think that's a huge benefit to this.
Yeah, you make excellent points there, Jason, because, the whole COVID thing was legitimately fear-based. When we were losing thousands of people a day and no one knew how or why, and people were washing their potatoes and leaving them outside for a couple days. I mean, people would and did do about everything and anything.
Yeah.
And it also allowed people who were actually a little antisocial to justify it.
Yeah.
It made people who were almost at the point where they were going to move out of their shell to become more insulated and isolated. But I remember it just happened coincidentally that when I got heavily involved on LinkedIn, it's when COVID really started to show its ugly head. And everybody went inside to LinkedIn. People who were meeting at Starbucks and Paneras and going to trade shows and conferences said that day is over. And now the people embraced a new vehicle where you could get to know so many people without ever getting beyond your screen. There was no challenge of ever catching something through a Zoom or through a LinkedIn. Well, they really leapfrogged so many people versus the people who are looking for the all clear signal that has never really come.
Right.
Go to a restaurant and have someone start coughing and sneezing all over the place. And now you don't think, oh, they must have a bad cold. It's like, what could I catch?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the dining experience became, let's just eat and go. We're not hanging out here, or we're going to the store, buy what you need, let's get out of there.
Yeah.
And I think when you can now see what happened with fear, if you return love-based, right, the opposite of fear, hope-based, and use that as your not only message, but as your persona. People see you before they hear you.
Yeah.
Here's some great, Dennis is on a roll, wouldn't want to end the show without sharing his agree. Community should be common, will help us communicate before it's too late. Agree, don't be negative when we can be better being positive. That's the BBB. Agree, a smile can help us go that extra mile helping others. Agree, correct, to connect and get more things correct. Thanks for sharing your great moment. You bet, Dennis, and thanks for responding and sharing your great thoughts. And it compounds, right? I say something, it has meaning. Me and Jason say something, it has even more meaning. But when the audience sees it and shares with it, it validates it and compounds it, and it also spreads it. We push it, but it has to keep getting some sort of force going forward to maintain itself.
Right.
And then after this show, the beauty of it is it doesn't end at the end of the show. It's on YouTube forever. It'll be on LinkedIn forever, and you get collateral benefit from these activities. So if you can get paid, paid again, paid now, and paid in the future, wouldn't that be a great position where you got this plus this plus this and you keep getting it? And that's one of the secrets to wealth success is building residual income. Doing something today, write a book, make a record, and every time someone buys it, you keep getting paid even though you're not doing any more work. Well, this is knowledge payment, knowledge value that you're providing. And the more you do it, the more you want to do it, and the more comfortable you are in doing it. So you stretch a little more. Mm-hmm. Things you do on your 10th show is not something you'd even think about for your first show. And that says, hey, not only am I helping people, I'm helping myself as I'm helping people, and they're helping me help myself. And it just continues to spread. So 1 hour on the dot. Kerry says he never contracted, I think, COVID. Well, good for you. But I will say there's a lot of people that have had it and didn't know they had it. A lot of people who have gained some sort of tolerance or something from it. And, I think a lot of everything is how you approach something, how you enter into something. Attitude is so valuable. And live streaming, to kind of put it all together, can make a lot of things happen that people couldn't have done on their own. So, Jason, any final thought you might have?
No, just thank you for having me on and being part of this process. And I think it's great to, like I said, be in front of folks and be live and have that communication. And I do appreciate too, like you said, and this is recorded and people can join the conversation. And and this energy can be contagious, not to pun intended, but and you can pick it up later, but it's better in person. So, go out, say hi to somebody, smile at somebody, and just see how your day goes.
That is so very motivating in the right way. I want to thank Jason. I want to thank the audience. I love these one-on-ones as much as I love one-on-twos and one-on-threes. And it gives everybody a chance to adjust a little bit more to more airtime and also more ideas and thoughts. So with that said, come back Monday. Jason will be here on Monday and may have someone else also. And enjoy the rest of your long weekend starting now. And we'll definitely talk and share some more.